Business Communications 310 American River College, Business Communications, Polishing Your Professional Presence. In this chapter, we're discussing communication of bad news. The study questions that you'll be faced with in this chapter include: how will the ACE process help me deliver bad news effectively? How should I analyze and plan a bad news message? What are effective strategies for composing bad news messages? How should I evaluate bad news messages? And finally, what types of bad news messages are common in business? Bad news messages are challenging to compose because they require you to achieve a number of goals that are incompatible at the first glance. The ACE process can help you make good decisions that will help you achieve these goals. To communicate bad news messages well, you must balance 4 goals. Number 1, conveying the news clearly, yet sensitively to protect the audience's self-esteem. 2, convincing the audience to accept the bad news. 3, projecting a positive image of yourself and your organization. And finally, avoiding legal complications and liabilities. Take a look at this ACE process now. Analyze, compose, and evaluate. Pause the screen if necessary. Before composing a bad news message, analyze the situation by asking yourself several questions. These questions will help you develop content and choose the best medium. How will you deliver this bad news? Analyzing is crucial to developing a message that supports your business goals and positively affects the audience's reaction. Consider analyzing questions outlined in this figure. What is the bad news? What business result would you like to achieve in communication of this bad news? How will the audience react to this news? What justification and explanation should you include? Is there anything you can do to soften the bad news? For example, is there any good news to include? Will the audience benefit in any way? Does this cloud have a silver lining? Should I include an apology? Can I do anything else to project a positive image and maintain goodwill and relationship? The final analysis question focuses on choosing of a medium. When you communicate bad news, select a medium that best fits your purpose. Think of the message, the audience, and the situation. The composing questions in this section focus on how to say it. Should I begin with the bad news or build up to it? How should I phrase the bad news? What is the best way to soften the impact of the message? And how can I close this message most appropriately? Even in bad news situations, the direct approach may be a good idea, especially if your audience is expecting to hear from you, and the news will not come as a big surprise. In other bad news situations, you can help your audience better understand and accept the news by using an indirect organizational method, by placing the main idea after the supporting details. The best way to ensure the audience understands the bad news is to state it clearly. If you convey bad news in a vague manner, or even imply an answer, the audience may misunderstand. Regardless of whether you present the bad news directly or indirectly, you want to soften the blow. Even if it is expected, you can do this several ways. Develop an effective buffer, position good news ahead of bad news, subordinate the bad news, or use positive and/or neutral language. Several strategies can help create a sense of goodwill when communicating bad news messages, including using a positive opening, explaining audience benefits, and subordinating the bad news. The conclusion provides an additional opportunity to stress the positive, instill confidence, and promote goodwill. A positive closing does not refer to the negative news, nor apologize for the bad news. It is forward-looking and optimistic. For any communication, evaluation is important to ensure that your message is effective. For sensitive communication like bad news, evaluation is particularly important because communication can have significant negative business results. As you evaluate your message, look at it objectively and consider whether it was clear, easy to understand, and most importantly, honest. Also, consider whether you're communicating a sense of goodwill towards your audience. As the discussion in the textbook makes clear, the version is not honest. It also does not communicate any goodwill. Then, step back and put yourself in your audience's position to evaluate how they are likely to respond and whether the message will achieve the business result that you intended. This version is much more effective. Pause the screen to read it if you need to. Most people do not write bad news messages on any given day. However, common situations do occur that require communicating of bad news. Some of those situations are denying a request or invitation, denying a consumer complaint, rejecting a recommendation or proposal, identifying issues and problems, or communicating a negative change. When you cannot, or you're not willing to, grant a request or accept an invitation, you need to find a tactful, professional way to say no, while at the same time do not make your audience feel guilty just for asking. When denying a customer request complaint, maintain goodwill is important because you want to maintain that customer's future business as well as the business of their colleagues and acquaintances. Bad news about customer service travels fast and far. Research shows that customers tell nearly twice as many people about their bad experiences as they ever will a positive one. In today's team-based businesses, collaboration increases the number of ideas that are generated. It also creates situations where you often have to decline more ideas than you accept when completing a project. How do you tactfully turn down someone's recommendation while maintaining goodwill and ensuring that that person will continue to provide and contribute ideas into the future? The key is to express appreciation and provide a convincing explanation. In your business dealings with other companies, you may need to identify an issue or problem. For example, you may need to tell a client that project results are disappointing, or that you need to tell vendors that their service is poor. Although you might think that being sensitive to a vendor about bad news is not as important as being sensitive to a client, in most cases you want to fix the problem, yet continue that positive business relationship. In addition, a disgruntled vendor can easily damage your reputation by complaining to the customers and other competitors. Change is so pervasive in business and industry that change management has emerged as a discipline to study. It includes effective methods of managing organizational change for process and systems, human resources, and information technology. However, changes that negatively affect audiences, such as layoffs or reductions in benefits, offer unique challenges. In summary, presenting bad news requires that you balance many goals, and they are not always easy to combine. This chapter will provide you with techniques that you will help state bad news clearly, and also soften its negative effect. Your overall business goals should continue to maintain positive relationships. While you may disappoint your audience at times, you still want them to understand your rationale, to believe that you are reasonable, and to feel good about you and themselves.